All right, Jim, I mentioned earlier in the news segment that Disneyland has announced an expansion and some rework of the Haunted Mansion queue in Disneyland. But there's more than that, right?
There is. I mean, there's no other way to put it, folks. The Haunted Mansion is having a moment right now. I mean, yeah, the new movie version that was out in theaters this past summer, which second try by Disney Studios to make a movie based on Mansion, didn't exactly set the world on fire. Cost $160 million to make, and to date has only pulled in $62 million in North America. So that's not a moment that makes accountants happy.
Have you seen it?
I have. And again, it's got a killer cast.
Yeah.
And it has a surprisingly strong thread running through it about dealing with grief. I mean, it really has a neat emotional underpinning. And not to give away the ending, but tater tot. Oh, that's a great touch. But if we look around, I mean, for example, in Florida, work is still underway to bring the Hatbox Ghost into the mansion, Walt Disney World's Magic Kingdom.
Yep.
And again, I understand, kind of controversial. Other thing important to remember here about the Hatbox Ghost coming to Florida is the folks who run Momentum More, the gift shop that's sort of just beyond the exit of Haunted Mansion Holiday.
In Liberty Square,
they are positively giddy about the amount of Hatbox Ghost merch they think they're going to sell once that character finally officially debuts in the attraction. And do we have a ballpark yet on when that's actually going to happen?
No idea. My guess is less than one Tron, but whatever.
Well, that's an interesting unit of measure, Len.
It's my new default.
There we go. All right. Meanwhile, out on the West Coast, in fact, we're recording this on Thursday, August 31st. Tomorrow, September 1st, the 2023 edition of Haunted Mansion Holiday debuts. And per usual, that's again another big merchandise mover.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, Len, this is going to be the 21st year that the mansion has been Burtonized.
Wow.
Worth remembering that Haunted Mansion Holiday didn't happen in 2020. Again, that was largely due to COVID. The entire resort was shut down from mid-March of that year all the way through April 30th, 2021, closed for 412 days.
Insane. I mean, people are going to be talking about that closure for years.
They are. But what people are excited about today is not the 2023 version of Haunted Mansion Holiday, but rather the expansion of the mansion's grounds that just got announced earlier this week.
Yeah.
So you've read the press release, right?
Yep.
Okay. So this is not about doing anything inside the mansion. In fact, these additions to this attraction will build on the story and already established lore of Disney's Haunted Mansion, and will include an expanded outdoor queue to immerse guests in enhanced theming, as well as a new retail shop adjacent to the attraction's exit. This expanded queue space will take guests through gardens that will then celebrate three of the mansion's more infamous residents, and that's Master Gracie, Madame Leota, and the One-Eyed Cat.
Oh, interesting. So we've got sort of a garden-esque thing in Walt Disney World, right? That was one of the expansions in the last decade or so.
Yeah, but what's interesting is, remember, that was a scene one with all of the interactive stuff. In fact, what especially intrigues me about this new expanded gardens thing is I was talking with folks at Disney over the last day or so, and they were mentioning that these three new scenes will allow up to 600 additional people to be in the physical queue for the mansion. Now, mind you, they still have to make their way all the way through this back and forth to get to the actual entrance of the mansion. But that's another 600 bodies off the street.
And I think that's the thing that I got out of this announcement when I read it. I mean, you and I have talked on this show about how Imagineers seem only to want to work on two attractions, and that's Haunted Mansion and Pirates of the Caribbean. And so when I saw this, I was like, my God, do something else. But if you think about the crowd control that's going to be needed next fall when Tiana's Bayou Adventure opens and they have the Haunted Mansion Holiday, right?
Yeah.
That is where you want to get people off of that walkway from New Orleans Square to Critter Country, and you want to move it over to outside of that pedestrian traffic. And so I think this is a crowd control measure. Like, what was the thing that they did prior to Galaxy's Edge opening up? What was the name of that? Like Project Sparkle or something?
Project Stardust.
Stardust,
And
yeah,
I am so glad you brought that up, because I was chatting with our Disney Unpacked collaborator, Mr. Schul, the other day about this very thing. And he's genuinely concerned that you have Tiana's Palace opening up. In fact, it'll be open now.
Yeah,
isn't
it's open. Yeah.
Okay.
But that's at the Adventureland end of New Orleans Square, and Haunted Mansion's at the opposite end.
Well, actually, they're a lot closer than you might think, Leonard. Think about this. We have Tiana's Palace. You then have the Haunted Mansion. Directly across from the Haunted Mansion, you have the new Pelican Landing, and that just opened in 2001 to create more seating for food service with the Harbor Galley.
Oh, right.
You
Yeah.
then consider that, again, Tiana's Bayou Adventure, and the fact that all of this stuff has come online in a relatively short window of time, just behind opening Galaxy's Edge,
Right.
in 2019. So if you think about all of this new stuff that people come, the Southern Californians come to Disneyland and they want to see the new stuff, the center of gravity of this park is going to so significantly change, especially when Haunted Mansion Holiday happens.
Right.
And remember how much retail they do every year that keys off of those characters. And we haven't even talked about the new carriage house component, the post-show retail that they're going to build. You're going to come up out of the mausoleum at the mansion, and then directly to your left is going to be a brand new freestanding store.
Really? That big?
That big. In fact, I had always been told that, well, shouldn't you guys have a store? You always have a cart.
Yeah.
You always have, they have a tiny little merchandise cart outside of the mansion. And why don't you build something at the exit? And
That looks like a mausoleum. It would just go, right? Like, come on.
Well, but the interesting thing is there's supposedly a retaining wall there right next to the exit of the attraction that is very problematic. The fact that they are finally willing to weigh in and deal with this issue in order to create this space is kind of huge.
Oh, good.
But as Mr. Schul was saying, when you think about all of those new things that are being added to that side of the park,
Yeah.
it's entirely possible that at some point in the very near future, someone's going to Disneyland and they're going to walk up to the hub and they're going to ask a cast member, what's the fastest way to get over to Tiana's Bayou Adventure?
Galaxy's Edge.
No, that's it exactly. You're going to direct them through Fantasyland and then take one of those two portals. And that's the way to go, because otherwise it's body to body from Tiana's Palace all the way to the Bayou.
Well, I know that Park Ops likes to have multiple paths to get to the same place, right? It's good crowd control, it's good emergency planning, right? It's better if you can do that. So that totally makes sense. No,
absolutely.
but to your point, like when everything hits next fall,
Yeah.
it's going to be a throng of people. And, the lines for Tiana's Bayou Adventure are going to be, a couple hours long.
Oh, easy.
They're going to have to figure out where to put those people. So I think, this moving some of the guests that are in the line for Haunted Mansion more into the area inside the gates there definitely makes sense.
There's a part of me that just feels so bad for Guy Selga right now.
Exactly. Guy does our in-park and Disneyland stuff. Yeah. He's probably going to spend a lot of time figuring out walking distances and things like that.
Oh, no, absolutely. But anyway, to get back to the carriage house, what's kind of interesting is that the story that they're creating for that building is supposedly this would be where Madame Leota lived while she was doing the, staying as a guest, at the mansion. And the plan was that this building on the grounds of the mansion would actually be decorated with some of the props and the costumes that Jamie Lee Curtis used and wore during the movie that came out this summer. Of course, now, what with the movie underperforming at the box office, it'll be interesting to see if they go forward with that. And
oh, yeah.
when the first Haunted Mansion movie came out in November of 2003, and that had a really strong Disney pedigree. I mean, the director of it was Rob Minkoff, the co-director of the animated Lion King, and producer was Don Hahn, the producer of the animated Beauty and the Beast. And so the Imagineers were so certain this was going to be a success, they were already planning on sort of like what happened with the Pirates of the Caribbean, where we got the animatronic Jack Sparrow and Barbossa in 2006.
Yeah.
They were already talking about bringing elements of that Eddie Murphy movie into the mansion. And in fact, to the point where they had discussions with Jennifer Tilly's agent. The idea was that they'd already talked with her about January 2004. We're going to need you to come in because we're going to reshoot the Leota stuff. We're going to need you to read the spiel that they've done forever in that space, and we're going to need you to hold your face very still so we can put it in the ball.
Yeah, so we can projection map it onto a sphere. Yeah,
there we go. Yeah. There we go. But anyway, that fell off the table, and now here we are. Again with the folks in California who are just thrilled about. I think of all the aspects of this. The notion that they are finally getting a dedicated retail for a mansion just makes them giddy. And again, that's all on the back of what they know from the folks in Florida who, remember, Memento Mori only became the mansion dedicated store in, what was that, October of 2014. Prior to that, it was the Yankee Trader.
Yeah. And I think this is actually a great addition to the park because it follows the theme pretty closely. It makes use of existing space, so nothing had to be knocked down to get it, and it definitely fits in better than Yankee Trader for that particular segment of the park. The thing that I've always been interested in is when you're sitting at lunch at Columbia Harbour House and looking out over the mansion, the queue, because I like to sit on the second floor and look at the line at Haunted Mansion. It's just what I do. Could they have themed something inside Columbia Harbour House to fit in with the story of one of the characters, like Master Gracie?
Oh, Mr. Testa.
Good lead in, Jim. You have a story for this?
There we go. We go. Because I just recently discovered Marcello Vignali's online portfolio. And Marcello, for those of you who don't know, was an Imagineer, a brilliant Imagineer. In fact, when you ride through Roger Rabbit's cartoon spin out in California, so many of those wonderful show scenes came straight out of Marcello's pencil. Brilliant designer, great guy. And the Imagineers at one point were eyeballing the notion of, okay, could we expand the footprint of the Haunted Mansion? Just not with Memento Mori. And like you just said, Len, could we go across the street to Columbia Harbour House? And if so, what could we do? And so just this week, I shared with Len 2 pieces of art that I found in Marcello's portfolio for the Haunted Harbor Galley. Can you describe what I sent you?
Yeah, so first of all, I love it. This is sort of like a brown and red pencil drawing. And it uses the existing Columbia Harbour House outside structure. So, that stays the same. And you can see in sort of on the left side of the concept art, the walkway into Fantasyland. So that part stays as well. The interesting thing is that there are nautical themes bolted on to the outside of the existing building to make it look like it's a ship crossed with Columbia Harbour House. So the very front of Columbia Harbour House, the sidewall facing the mansion, is the bow of a ship, complete with the rigging and everything going back in. And out of the roof of Columbia Harbour House is a set of sails, and they're all tattered and they're blowing in the wind and stuff, which would totally happen in Florida anyway. But you also see there's a little portico entrance on the side of Columbia Harbour. On the top of that, where it would be like a second floor balcony or patio, you've got a ship's wheel and flags and stuff. So you could definitely see characters coming up there and yelling at passersby saying, "Come in and try some of our victuals and stuff."
Speaking of which, when you enter the restaurant, Marcello did an amazing sort of taste of how they would trick up the interior of Columbia Harbor.
And the thing that I love about this too is it keeps the details of the original Harbour House. Like you could look at this concept art and it looks like, the inside of a ship, whatever. But then there are ghostly things added to it. Like there's a treasure chest sitting in the corner, and every kiosk, for a terminal where you order food has a little ship's wheel in front of it. But the thing that I love too is you walk in, and normally I don't look to the left because the food is to the right when I go in, but to the left is a skeleton in a diving bell suit. And it looks like it's illuminated from the inside just to see the skull. Yeah, it's great art. Really, really good stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely killer.
Yeah. This is doable.
That's what's fascinating about it. This basically, Len, is a turnkey. The moment that Disney actually decides, there's actually a market out there for a haunted mansion. And again, remember, this is a counter service. What's the capacity for...
it's several hundred. It's not as big as Pecos Bills, which kind of goes into Tortuga Tavern, but it's pretty decent size. Yeah.
Okay.
So, the thing that I love about this, though, Jim, is, this is all Instagrammable. Like, this is made for social media.
Totally. But again, it's one of these ideas that's literally sitting in a drawer that Disney could turn on today if they decided to. Now, to jump back to Disneyland for a moment, Disney has been looking for ways to expand the footprint of the Haunted Mansion long before this new expanded queue in the retail.
Sure.
In fact, that's the other thing I shared with Len this week is I came across a series of production paintings that were done for a nighttime show that was proposed for Disneyland back in the mid to late 1980s. And
it's that old. Wow, interesting.
Yeah, well, they had been kicking the tires about doing some sort of nighttime thing on the rivers of America for years. They had the rolling river review that they do on a seasonal basis, but it was the notion of, if we really invested, if we did something of size, what could we do? And what the stepping off of this point for this show would have been introducing a new piece of mythology to Disneyland's Haunted Mansion, which the fact was, I don't think you want to be around there after dark. And it's like, well, why?
Really? Yeah, why?
Well, because after dusk, the 999 happy haunts inside of that building can actually come out. Mind you, they can't go all that far. They can go into the streets of New Orleans Square and actually make it just a little bit across the rivers of America to Tom Sawyer's Island.
Wow, that opens up a ton of entertainment possibilities.
And so let's talk about these paintings that I shared with you. When you look at these, and what's fascinating for me is there's so much of the core of the ultimate Fantasmic show that we got.
I was going to say, this is basically spooky Fantasmic.
That's it, exactly. For example, they turn the Columbia. It's not the Jolly Roger with Peter Pan and Captain Hook. It's a ghost.
It's a ghost ship with ghosts fighting along the sides on there's on a plank. There's explosions. There's ghosts up in the sails. Fighting each other with cutlasses. Yeah, and you could see how with the right sort of bodysuits and costuming that glow in the dark. This would totally make sense.
No, totally. But at the same time, what's also interesting is to look at how they were planning on using that stage space at the end, the southernmost end of Tom Sawyer's Island. And, for example, there's a painting where they recreate the seance room scene with Madame Leota. And then there's also a one in the pile there where it's the organist of the grand ballroom.
Right, and then you see the ballroom scene. Yeah.
They clearly put a lot of time, a lot of thought into this. And what ultimately, as it was explained to me, was that when they went to show it to Disneyland management, the pushback was, yeah, guys, this is great, but this celebrates just one attraction. And in much the same way as, earlier in the show, how you were talking about how there's some of the little kids who are terrified of, Dinosaur the Ride or Countdown to Extinction.
Yeah.
The notion of, the little kids are like, well, I don't want to watch a nighttime show that's only about Haunted Mansion. That would be scary. And so they eventually defaulted to all right, let's go with a broader palette, so to speak. And this is how we wound up with the show that early on had the ungainly title of Disneyland Imagination River Show.
Wow. You want to talk about a non-specific title.
Oh, yeah, there we go. Generic nighttime entertainment, which eventually devolved to Fantasmic. Now, to bring this week's feature to a close, we got the original Fantasmic, opened May of 1992. Yeah. That show has been suspended since the fire back in April, April 22nd of this year. And Disney has announced that the show will return in spring of 2024 with a brand new climax, which means that they are abandoning the fire-breathing dragon idea. And I would argue, Len, if they're still looking for a climax, they should pull out these 8 production paintings.
Oh, yeah.
There's a couple ideas in here that could be, amazing.
The concept art is really, really well done. And every panel of this art has, 5 good ideas that you could implement. I get that Disney doesn't want to do a nighttime spectacular that's devoted to just one attraction. But they spend a lot of money and incur a lot of downtime on Haunted Mansion. I don't know if they could make this a seasonal entertainment thing because the expense would be just insane. But Jim, you could sell tickets just to the park just on this alone.
That's an interesting idea, Len.
Yeah, I love this whole concept. I like the idea too of the invisible horses drawing the see-through hearse. Again, remains to be seen. But on the water, like it's a boat, but it looks like a carriage. Yeah. So many great ideas. Yeah, this is really good stuff.
But anyway, so that's kind of an overview of everything that's going on with Mansion right now, as well as stuff that almost happened.
That's fantastic. Jim, will you post these images to social media so people can see them?
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Yeah, great ideas.